Today, we're going to be continuing on with the most anticipated of 2017, followed by the best and the worst of 2016. So stay tuned.
Welcome to The Real Review.
Welcome to The Real Review, sponsored by Parametric and Lazy Ape Studios, where you get some of the latest happenings, real thoughts, and perspectives in the world of film and television. I am Joel Topher Grace Cunningham, and this is Matt. Can't remember his lappity top. Hey, how you doing, Matt?
I'm doing awesome. It's so true. I can't remember it.
No, you've got this ancient model laptop.
I know. It's like 10 years old, and you have to actually use the sidebar to scroll. It's crazy.
How does that work? I don't even know how that works these days.
No, it's weird.
But yeah, great to have you here, Matt.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Great to have you as well.
I'm excited to be here. I wore my nice shirt and everything.
It's fancy.
It's super fancy. But, we're so excited to be here today. We wanted to start off, because we didn't get a chance to really talk about this too much in our first episode.
Right.
Explaining some details of maybe how the show works a little bit.
Yeah, so
I think it's a good idea.
Absolutely it is. I think that one thing that we didn't, like you said, we didn't really get a chance to speak about previously was a little bit of the show's, bones.
Structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think what's really cool about the way that we have this kind of situated is more of kind of in a general sense where the film critic and the general like movie going fans opinions collide.
Yes.
That kind of a thing.
The coming together of, I don't know what you would call it, the giant explosion of critic versus fan perspective.
Right.
So, Matt, you kind of represent a lot more the fan perspective, and I kind of represent more the critic perspective, which is very usually evident by the fact that I hate films and you love... No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
By the fact that I'm very critical with films often, and Matt, you tend to be more positive, optimistic.
Right.
With your perspective.
As I've said previously, yes, I'm generally optimistic about films in general.
Exactly. So we're not here to tell people exactly what to think or how to think as well. We want to make sure that people understand that we're giving subjective opinions that are based upon, studied work. We do put our time and effort into understanding what we're talking about, but we understand that everybody's got a different perspective, maybe an emotional appeal or something that came to a film.
Right.
So yeah, so definitely check us out and keep listening if that is something that interests you.
It definitely interests me.
Well, I'm glad because you're hosting. So awesome. So that's basically it. Let's get right into it. Does that sound good?
Absolutely.
All right. So we're going to continue on with our most anticipated films in 2017. So Matt, why don't you kick us off? What's our first film?
We have the legendary.
Legendary.
No, so we have Star Wars Episode 8.
Oh, dang. That's a big one to start with.
Huge one, I know. And I wanted to do that because, Star Wars, man.
Yeah, but people are going to listen and then they're going to turn it off as soon as they're done.
Nah, Star Wars, man.
Gotcha.
It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be great. Yeah. Well, we're really excited for this film. I mean, Star Wars Episode 8, as some of you may or may not know, it's coming out December 15th, 2017. The director for this is Rian Johnson, and he's a really interesting director because he's done some big films, namely Looper. That's kind of the one that he's really known for.
Love Looper.
That a lot of people really enjoyed and really liked. But he hasn't done, other than that, he hasn't done like a bazillion of other huge films. He was a director for Breaking Bad for a couple episodes, and he did a film called Terriers, which I think a lot of people really liked, and then some kind of more independent type fare that happened earlier in his career. And he's working with a cinematographer, though, that he has worked with before by the name of Steve Yedlin. I don't know if that's his name exactly pronounced correctly.
Sure.
But this guy's done some bigger films himself. So he's done San Andreas. He's done Carrie. He did work with Ryan on Looper. So they do have experience working together. And they did put together, I would say, a visual feast with Looper.
Yes.
One of the things that I think everybody can hopefully agree on is that it had some really gorgeous cinematography. So I am very excited about that. Matt, what's your perspective on this film?
Just general excitement. I really enjoyed The Force Awakens. There were, and yes, I agree. I think a lot of it was a lot of retread from some previous films.
Just a little.
But I think that's what was needed. I feel like that was what was needed to help re-engage the Star Wars community again and bring on new people all at the same time to engage you with new characters and hit those plot points. And while those plot points might be, again, similar to what you've seen in previous Star Wars films, I think it's got that kind of hero's journey again, where it's kind of beginning that and starting this new trilogy. So going into this, I'm excited, specifically with Rian Johnson, mainly because of Looper. I haven't seen actually some of these other films. I did watch Breaking Bad. I did enjoy that, but
really,
yes,
you
so
liked it. Nice.
I liked it a lot. So one thing I liked about Looper was it was very dark in tone, and I think if you could bring that sensibility to this and bring it almost, and I know it's very cliched to say this, but to make this almost the Empire Strikes Back of this new trilogy, I think that could be something pretty special. Yeah,
I would agree with that. I mean, if you think of Breaking Bad, if you think of Looper, those are both films and shows that had a dark edge, that went to a pretty dark place a lot of times. I mean, with Looper, children blowing people up,
right.
You know. So I think this is a great director in a way to kind of harbor a story that would be darker in tone. And there's been a lot of conversation from Boyega and Driver, who are both actors in the film, that have both said that this will have more of an Empire Strikes Back kind of feel and maybe like a darker edge to it. And I get what you're saying as well with the last film, kind of in a way rhyming or matching what tonally and feel wise the story was from the Star Wars movies, because it was actually, you know, co-written by Lawrence Kasdan, who was one of the original writers for Star Wars series, the original Star Wars trilogy. So this film is being written basically completely by Rian, the director. And so this is like a film that's completely in a different director's hands, doesn't have any involvement from any of the original writers or anything like that. So it'll be interesting to see what direction he's going to take it in.
Right. And it still has the like the Kathleen Kennedy and all the producers involved in the the Lucasfilm story
That's
group
true.
kind
and
of being involved in that.
And you've got John Williams, which you're going to get a great score.
I love that guy.
Yeah, he's a really good guy. So I would definitely say this is a film that we're very much looking forward to coming out next year. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Cool. So what's our next film?
Next, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I'm very excited about this.
You're excited about this one. I'm excited about this one. The previews, here's the thing that happens.
I sense hesitation. What's happening
There's
here?
a slight, yes, exactly. What happened? Basically, the films will release these previews that are just, they knock it out of the park. And it's, you know, like the trailers, they're just amazing. And then you get to the film and it's never anywhere near as good. And that happens all the time. It's a very common thing. They're like, oh, why are trailers so good, but the film sucks? But this trailer looked like it was taking some really good elements from the film and showing those. And I'm just hoping it didn't fall to that path, that same old path of taking like the best parts of the film and then putting that into the trailer.
You know, comedies are really guilty of that, of doing that a lot.
Absolutely.
And that's always disappointment. I almost don't like going to comedies, especially if I like the trailer, because I know I'm like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But
there's some additional reason for hesitation, I will say here.
Okay.
So the director is the same director. So I mean, he's coming back for number 2, but we are bringing on a brand new cinematographer. So we've got a guy named Henry Braham. He's done some good projects, but this is his first time working with James. And James, and if people know basically the way that a relationship between a cinematographer and a director works, these are the two guys that in a lot of ways will account for what's filmed on the camera. And if those two people haven't worked together, they're not familiar with each other, then there's always a bit of a breaking in point. There's always a bit of getting to know each other. And so they've both done big projects on their own, but doing one together, you don't really know what impact that's necessarily going to make on the film, you know?
Right.
So the cinematographer, he's done Legend of Tarzan. He did a film didn't do too well called Golden Compass. He did another film called Flyboys, which goodness,
your favorite movie.
Oh, just lovely. But he did do a kids film that it was actually a lot of people kind of enjoyed, Nanny McPhee. And then strangely enough, he did Shakespeare in Love way back when. So this is being written by James Gunn as well. In the previous script, he did have another writer that kind of helped him and assisted with him in writing the film. And so we'll see if he's capable of basically bringing this on and doing it himself. Last time, a girl named Nicole Perlman. Right. So we'll see what he can do. We'll see if the cinematographer makes a difference. We'll see if writing it himself makes a difference in going forward.
Right. Did you like the first Guardians?
I loved the first Guardians.
Right.
I loved it except for the end.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't like the way that they kind of did the everybody band together,
right.
You know, we're gonna save the day with our love type. Right. You know, it felt like they kind of copped out. They
like
didn't
the
really
Care
know.
Bears.
Yeah, they built up this great, and they built exactly. They built up this great kind of nemesis and this really powerful like force with the the diamond thing with the, I don't forget.
Infinity
the
Stone.
Infinity Stone. There you go, yeah. So they built up this great epic force, and then basically love saves the day. And I feel like that's such a cop-out. It was like a Deus Ex Machina love version. So I didn't like the ending. I did love the humor.
Right.
That caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting it to be as funny as it was. I felt like the cast nailed it. I thought the cast was great. The story itself was, again, kind of based upon the ending and everything. Just, it was okay. It didn't felt like they did anything groundbreaking with it to me. It was just more about the cast of characters. So if he can bring this back and do the same things with the characters, have the humor still be there, and not fall flat with the cinematography and stuff, then I think I will enjoy it. And how about you, Matt?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was weird because I didn't know anything about it going into it. Mm-hmm. The trailers, I was like, this is weird. Marvel, what are you doing here? Yeah. I left pleasantly surprised.
Which is a good thing.
Very good thing. And I don't know if it's because my expectations were super low going into it, but I think the biggest thing that it has going for it is the cast and the characters that they've developed. And I think, even if there is let's say there is, if they're just not up to par with the cinematography, let's just say it just doesn't work out that way. I think if they can focus their efforts, and this is what it looks like in the marketing thus far, is if they can focus their energies on making sure that the characters are still the great characters that we've come to know and love. Yeah, I think that it can, in a sense, kind of overshadow that. But I think that's where a lot of its strengths lie. And if they can continue to go that way, I mean, who thought that a talking raccoon would be
Well, he shoots rockets.
I know. I mean, I think a talking raccoon. Like who thought that would be something that you be super excited about
and I would
seeing?
encourage anybody that you might not be familiar with how the Guardians of the Galaxy came into being as a comic book. It's worth checking out their history of sort of how they weren't originally going to be their own comic, and it kind of turned into a big thing. And it was pretty cool. But so two things. One, I would say, a big concern for mine that I don't want to see happen is I don't want them to jump into the story and have the characters kind of already operating at their like peak and best. I think what they need to do personally is they need to show you that, yes, the characters have sort of come together as this hodgepodge crew, but they're not operating in their peak tip-top condition
They
together.
still need to have an arc.
Right. They still need to have an arc. They still need to go somewhere as characters. We haven't quite arrived with them yet as being the Guardians of the Galaxy of this official team. So that's one thing, because if they do too much of that, it's going to remove a lot of suspense for me. But then additionally, there's two casting choices that I just want to discuss real quick here.
Okay.
One, we know the actual role that they're going to be playing. The other one we don't know yet, and that's the one I'm more like, wait, what? So the one we do know is Kurt Russell. He's going to be playing a role called Ego. And if you're familiar with, Marvel and everything in their universe, basically, Ego is this living planet. So he's a planet that is living, that has, organs and everything like that, and is sentient and can take on different shapes and different forms, which is crazy.
That is crazy.
It is crazy, but it fits. Okay, it fits with Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, you got a raccoon.
I mean, if
planet.
they can pull that off, talking planet. Hey, you know what?
Yeah, but the other one, and I'm more concerned about this because they haven't listed who he is. Maybe it's a small role. Who knows? Sylvester Stallone. What's he going to do in this film? I mean, I just don't see Rocky coming and be like, save the planet. I don't know what he's going to do. I'm a bit concerned about that.
It's a cliffhanger.
It is.
Crossover. Where it's like Cliffhanger 2.
Yeah.
Where Sylvester's got to climb a mountain.
Yeah.
And save Star-Lord.
Is this Rambo crossover? Is this Rocky crossover?
It's all of the crossovers.
It's all of the crossovers. So they're all in the same universe. So goodness, he's going to be a boxing, gun-toting space warrior. Wow.
Incredible.
Awesome. So that's going to be it for this episode's Best of 2017. We're going to go ahead and pick that up for our final segment. In the next episode, we're going to be finalizing all of our best of most anticipated, I should say, 2017 picks. So stay tuned for that. But now let's go ahead, Matt, and why don't we go ahead and hop into our Best of 2016 Part 2. So in the first episode, we talked a bit about some of our best favorite movies that we got to see during the year. Right. And I should definitely say these are the films we got to see. Right. Not just any film.
Because there's like a million out there.
There are so many. I was going through, looking through the list of films that came out in 2016, and sometimes it was like, oh, wow, I can't believe that came out. Mostly the bad ones. But then the good ones, I was like, wow, that was such a long time ago. So, so what's our first film here, Matt, for Best of 2016?
So on the list, we have Finding Dory.
Oh, actually. Good. Nice. I like that one.
I know. I think you really like this one. Actually, I feel like you should probably give us some insight on that.
Do you want me to give a bit of insight on that one?
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Finding Dory was basically a sequel, if you will, to the original Finding Nemo movie, which in and of itself kind of put it in a category for me that I wasn't expecting too much, because generally with comedies and things like that, and it is a kid's film, primarily adventure film, but it is also a very big comedy.
Yeah.
When you take a secondary film and you feature what was more or less kind of a non-main character, if you think of Cars 2, how it focused on Tater in his story and how horrible that ended up being, which I wasn't a big fan of Cars 1, but that's just an example.
Right.
When you go into like a side character and you kind of follow their story, that can work out really badly for you sometimes, because there's just generally not enough interest and suspense that's kind of built up in the story. So my expectations were kind of low for this. Pixar has been a little bit hit or miss for me here in the last couple years. Mm-hmm. And so I went in, it's directed by Andrew Stanton, and really ended up enjoying the film. I felt like they did a lot to bring in a new world and a new understanding of kind of the characters and the humor and what that could all mean. So the synopsis for this one, in case you haven't seen it, is basically Dory's a wide-eyed blue tank fish who suffers from memory loss every 10 seconds or so, which is kind of the fun of the joke in and of itself, and one of the big parts of this film. She basically, the one thing that she remembers is that as she was a child, she somehow ended up getting separated from her parents. So with her friends from the first film, Nemo and Marlin, Dory embarks on this, huge epic adventure to basically track down her parents, who kind of reside at this, aquarium type place on the coast of Australia. So, hijinks ensue, crazy funny things.
Sigourney Weaver.
Sigourney Weaver is all over the place in that film. But I really felt like they nailed it, especially with the characters that they added in this film. You have two characters. You have Kate Olsen, who plays this kind of whale shark type thing, and then you have Ed O'Neill, who plays a septopus.
Yep.
He's not an octopus. He's a septopus. He's kind of like this guy that's he's upset at the world. He's kind of had it. He's like, I'm done with people. People are evil. I just want to get back to the ocean. So he's kind of got that going on. And then you have this guy Ty Burrell, who's playing a beluga whale.
I love him.
Who had some of the best lines and just the silliest little humor with trying to make his echolocation
right?
work, and the big thing about this film that it accomplished for me, which is always a question, and Pixar does this so well sometimes, is it connected on a heart level.
Right.
You really got this sense of just kind of, oh my goodness, wow, that's really sad how Dory ended up getting sort of disconnected from her family under this set of circumstances. And then when they, spoilers here, when they meet back up, it pulls the heartstrings, and you're just like, wow, that is so neat. And it doesn't end there. A normal movie, that's like the arc. They end, they meet the parents, and then everybody's happy. But then there's like this ongoing kind of continued fallout from all the different things that happened. I additionally really loved the two sea lions, who played kind of more of a bit role.
Yeah.
But these are two guys that actually were originally in a television show called The Wire that were specifically cast to bring back in for just this film so they could kind of do a reunion.
Right. It's so funny.
So, Matt, what was your perspective on the film?
I really enjoyed that. I mean, just for what it was, and like you were saying earlier, Pixar is funny in just kind of how they do their things. But I think just in general, sequels, there's kind of this rule. I mean, you have exceptions out there, obviously, where sequels are never going to live up to the original. And there's just always this like, you want it to be awesome, but typically sequels will let you down. Kind of a thing.
A smidgen.
So. Well, that's probably my favorite aspect about this. I felt like they took a premise that was used in the first film, and they tweaked it in a way that didn't seem
with Dory's memory loss.
Yeah, they tweaked it in a way that didn't seem like that didn't get old. I mean, I think when you take a film like Finding Nemo and you take a side auxiliary character like Dory and you put it front and center, a lot of times you can get what I like to call a Minions situation going on.
It's another great example. Side characters.
Right. So where it can really fall flat, where they're best as a side character and they don't have what it takes essentially to take on their own lead role.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
In this situation, I felt like it was done to such a great caliber that it worked. I thought it really worked. And like you said, it had those emotional moments that really pushed along and allowed the audience to connect with it. And yeah, Ty Burrell, he's my favorite TV dad, and I can't get enough of that guy. So if he's in it, then, awesome.
Yeah. So definitely, if you get a chance to check this movie out, if you haven't already seen it, I would definitely suggest it. It's a great kids movie. It's a great family movie. I think adults can watch this film and get a lot of fun things out of it as well. And goodness me, the animation, Pixar's just getting better and better and better. I don't know if you see the trailer for Cars 3, which I'm just not excited for because I don't really like the Cars series,
right.
but visually, just their storytelling ability as a visual medium with animation is just, eventually they need to start shooting live action.
They're pushing boundaries. Seriously, I saw The Good Dinosaur.
Yeah, that was crazy.
The movie itself
Visually.
is just okay.
Yeah.
But visually, the environments, there was times I was like, this looks like a real stream and real plants. Like,
Agreed,
what is
yeah.
happening
They
here?
were so, but that one kind of ticked me off a little bit just because they did that so well. But then when you looked at the characters that were like the obvious cartoon Disney eyes, and so it was like, well, we have to make these characters marketable still. They can't be too, they can't be too fake,
we need
real
to make
looking.
we need to make them into stuffed animals.
Right, so we have to make them stuffed animals. So they like, everything's going to be completely real except for the characters. We want to sell toys,
Right.
and that kind of ticked me off. But, if they'd gone, the story in itself had some weaknesses there too.
Yeah,
So
I have to admit, we have an Arlo dinosaur stuffed animal at home. And
I will say, as a toy, he looks awesome.
my kids love it.
I would
The
probably love
movie
it if I
is
was a
just
kid, too.
okay.
Yeah, but very true. So cool. What's our next film for best of 2016?
Right, so I'm going to stick in the same vein here of animated films. I want to
Okay.
go with Moana.
Moana.
Actually.
Is that how you say that one?
Moana.
Not Moona?
Not Muna or Mona, it's Moana.
Very good.
There are so many good things that I have to say about Moana. It's
Say
another
them, Matt. Say them.
it's another Disney behemoth.
Yeah.
And one thing I really like about this film is not only just the story, but in the way that it's presented. This is the first time really that we're getting a Disney film it's kind of like, it's not really like a typical Disney princess, but in a sense it is kind of.
Yep.
Disney princess.
Yeah.
I think
you can say she's officially
princess,
a
but they
Disney
don't
princess,
call
yeah.
her that. She actually
Yeah.
says in the film like she's not a princess, that kind of a thing.
That was a funny kind of nod, wink to the camera.
Right.
It's like, I'm not a princess.
And
yeah.
it's the first time we're getting into this like tropical island life vibe, and I really like that. I like, my favorite aspect of this film though, I think is when we're talking about the story element that you see in so many other stories where it's an individual who's trying to get out on their own, to follow their heart, to find their purpose. That's kind of what it is, but at the same time, it's not at the expense of where she's coming from. She's really respectful in that sense. She, if you don't know what it's about, it's essentially this girl named Moana who feels trapped on this island, and she feels this, she feels this call to go
As
out and
one
explore.
would, realistically, if you're trapped on an island. I feel
Right.
like, yeah.
She feels this call
Yeah.
to go explore
Yeah.
and to voyage and essentially to go see what is out there beyond. So through a series of circumstances, mainly brought on by the Rock's character in Maui, the island starts to die, essentially.
Yeah.
There's all this mythology they set up at the beginning, but long story short, the island starts to die, and so she essentially takes it upon herself and feels forced to go do this to try and find, more resources or to fix what's happening. And so there's a sense of purpose. There's a sense of she needs to do this for her community and for the culture of the island and what's happening there. But at the same time, she's respectful of her dad, who doesn't want her to go out there, but she's respectful of her culture, her community, her dad, and she's really kind of in this like, she feels like rock in a hard place, but she does it with respect to that, where in so many other films it's just like, I'm just, whatever, I'm gonna forsake where I'm coming from and just go do this. I'm gonna be who I need to be.
She does have like an ongoing respect for the place that she's come from,
Right.
And that's probably the biggest driving factor for a lot of her, hesitancy is, well, I don't want to betray
Right.
this sense of purpose and everything that's been given to me, this
And-
weight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The other big thing is music, and I think that music is going to last a long time. Honestly, it's done by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who most of it's done by him. So it's he's done a lot of work more recently with Hamilton.
Okay.
And he's got a lot of stuff coming up. He has one of my favorite roles in one of the I can't remember, one of the last 2 seasons of House. He's like in this mental institution with House, and he plays like this rapper guy. He's awesome. He's Anyway, his name's Alvy. Check it out if you haven't seen it. Anyway, he does all the music for this, and it's great. It's the kind of music that when I took my son to the movie, we left, and what he wanted to do the whole ride home was just listen to the music.
Yeah.
And not only is the music catchy and that sort of thing, and I feel like it's going to live a long time after this movie is out, it's well placed. There's this kind of like this one theme song, it's called How Far I'll Go.
Yeah.
And they put it in the movies at these like kind of these climactic times that are like, that make you feel like, yeah, all right, kind of well placed songs. I think that was one of the biggest strengths I had going for it. But you had a chance to see this, right?
I did, yeah. We're going to see it a little bit differently, I think.
Right.
I did enjoy the film. I really liked it. I wouldn't say, for me, it falls in a best of category. Can I say that? I liked some aspects of it. I definitely liked the music. I thought was good and effective. I definitely liked the animation. I felt like they did a good job, in a sense, telling the story of Moana. I think my favorite character was probably Maui. I just liked his style and his humor.
Well, it's
and
The Rock, too. I mean,
right, it's The Rock.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong with that, But I thought he did a great job. I think the main factor that really kept this from being a film that really stands out as like a classic kind of like Disney for me, like a Disney film, is there is no, to me, sense of who the ultimate antagonist is. You know, if you think of classic Disney movies, you think of Scar, you think of Jafar. When you're talking about like an antagonist, you immediately like, okay, this is the movie. Even Hercules. You know what I mean? You have Hades, and so it's like you have an immediate sense of, okay, here's the good person, here's the bad person. This movie didn't have that for me, and I think it kept me from really engaging in the story as much as I wanted to. Because I didn't get the stakes as much as I felt like needed to be there and for me to really engage.
Right.
There was a couple types of antagonists that kind of, the beginning of the film is kind of more the people on the island themselves and Maui a little bit. And then the second antagonist is kind of these crab-like type, or like coconut type things.
Yeah.
And then the next antagonist, which was like my favorite, and I was actually hoping he would be like maybe an ongoing sort of antagonist, was this big, crab that lives in the bottom of the ocean. Amazing. I think it was Tim Curry, right?
Was the guy from Flight of the Conchords.
So still great voice, But for an overall antagonist, I thought he was hilarious. I thought his song was great and really intelligent. And his desire and his need and his reason for being antagonistic was there, and it fit. And then he's kind of like, oh, done, he's over. And then you have your last antagonist, who is kind of the main, I guess, stopping point from her, achieving what she needs to achieve to save the island.
Right.
But then you find out later that they're not really an antagonist. They're more just kind of like a misunderstood bad guy.
Right.
But it's actually a good guy, And so you could make the argument, I think, with the story that perhaps Moana was like her own worst antagonist, that she had to overcome her own sense of, but the biggest thing is that with something like that, there's no stakes of death. There was only really
kind of
one death, and then she dies from old age.
Yeah.
And that's not, that happens to everybody. We all unfortunately get old. God willing, we all get old and die. But, that really kept me, I think, from getting into this film. Scar, you think of Lion King, there's a huge death that sets off this huge chain of events. Even Jafar takes that guy out into the desert at the beginning. I think it's the guy, and he goes in the cave and he dies. And so it's this, stakes are high. And it just didn't feel like the stakes quite got there from Moana. I did enjoy the music.
Yeah.
Love the animation. I would definitely suggest people go watch it. One of the better films of the year, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. There wasn't a clear-cut, villain. My son just left saying, "What about the lava monster?" Like, that's what he said the whole time.
Yeah, but, I think that kid factor probably helps a lot too.
It totally helps. I mean, if my son's enjoying it and he's excited, I'm definitely going to be leaning more towards his excitement.
Yeah, well, next time I'll see if your kids are available. We can go watch a movie together. Next Disney movie that comes out. Maybe it'll aid in my viewing experience.
Or the Belko experiment.
There you go.
Yeah, don't see that with kids.
Yeah, probably not. Let's wait for that one to come out and find out how that.
Exactly. So we have one more. What do we have next, Joel?
Well, the next film, and this is going to be our last for the 2016 Best of. This is a film I was really excited for, and it did not fail to meet my expectations, which is pretty rare for me.
Nice.
It's a film called Deadpool, and this film is kind of it is a Marvel film, but it isn't at the same time.
Right. Marvel
It's-
property.
It's
Owned by Fox right now.
Absolutely. And if anybody out there is familiar with Deadpool and kind of his story, he's a very meta character. He's a very self-aware character to the point where, there's times in the comic book where, like, spoilers, he becomes self-aware, of the comic book that he's being written into, and eventually breaks out and like kills the writers and everything like that. And so there's been other, there's a comic book series where he goes and he kills everybody in the entire Marvel universe, which is like the same comic book series. But he's got these weird, crazy kind of meta, self-aware type stories that I didn't know how that would translate into film-wise. I didn't know if they were going to be able to pull that off well. And for the most part, they nailed it. I thought this film on a humor scale was great and was really awesome. I think Ryan Reynolds, who plays the character Deadpool, or goes by the name Wade Wilson in the film prior to becoming Deadpool, was like the perfect casting for this character. To summarize, for those who haven't seen the film, basically Wade Williams is this special forces ops who basically quit and then became a mercenary for hire. And then he falls in love with this girl, and there's this kind of like weird romance that they have. It's like perfect for both of them because they're both issues kind of romance, but they're perfect together. He ends up getting diagnosed with cancer, and in order to basically save his life and not die, he goes under this type of treatment, kind of tricked into this treatment where he comes across this sociopath scientist named Ajax,
Right.
who ends up disfiguring him and transforming him and forcing this like Deadpool type power to come out of his body. But in so doing, basically completely disforms his body and makes him, visually hideous.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Which there's some hilarious jokes kind of banter back and forth about his overall looks kind of throughout the movie as well. But yeah, so then there's kind of this revenge story that, Deadpool kind of goes on to try and, wreak revenge on Ajax for doing all this stuff after he escapes. And it's just really kind of funny at times. And then it goes ridiculously violent at other times. So it's definitely like a hard R movie.
Right.
But I mean, just some of the humor where at times like, he keeps interacting with these same X-Men characters,
Right,
the whole movie. And then at one point he finally goes, what, why do we only have these two X-Men here? Could the studio not afford more X-Men?
Right.
You know what I mean? So he's aware of the fact that like he's in a movie,
Right.
Which that kind of humor to me can be done well, and it can be done very poorly.
Right.
And I think it just hit the right tone, the right feeling of humor and kind of violence at the same time. What were your thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, so I have a different experience with this movie. I don't know if I don't know if it'd be on the top of my list, and I won't say that because it's a bad film. I would say that because my viewing experience was a little weird. I saw it on an airplane, and it was edited, and I don't know why it was edited, other than maybe so kids that were sitting on the airplane just wouldn't start watching Deadpool.
Probably that. It's probably a good thing they cut some stuff.
So it was really weird. All the language was weird. Some of the violent stuff was weird. You could tell they were cutting away from certain scenes. And just skipping over
Was
stuff.
there a scene where he got shot in the butt? Did you see that shot?
Yes.
Okay, well then maybe they didn't cut everything. I don't know.
Maybe not everything.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Was there a shot where a guy explodes onto a sign into bits and pieces?
There's a guy that hit a sign.
Yeah.
I don't know if it exploded or not.
And they probably cut that out. There's definitely that shot. Yeah.
So my view of this is pretty skewed. Although I will say that the meta, the humor in it was probably my favorite part. Like for example, there's a scene where they're talking about the X-Men, and he's talking about the current like state of X-Men films in today in real world. He's like, wait, are you talking about the James McAvoy or the Patrick Stewart Xavier? So
they even poke fun of his character as Green Lantern, as well as playing the other Deadpool in a prior version of a Wolverine film.
Right. There's a little action figure of what he looked like in the Wolverine.
Yeah.
It's so fun. That stuff is really funny to me, and it probably deserves another viewing on my part. But that kind of stuff I think is really interesting. Something very different. And you're right. I think Ryan Reynolds is perfect for this type of role.
Agreed. Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to see what they do with the sequels. There was this funny joke going around online that maybe as like a Deadpool type joke that they were filming two films back to back, and they're going to release both at the same time, kind of as a joke, which I thought would be hilarious. But we'll see what they do. I think it was a great start for Deadpool as a character, and I think he can add a really interesting twist, especially to the Marvel Universe, and seeing how he plays out, because he's always Deadpool's funny because he pops into little elements of stories, and he's kind of like a really funny character and catalyst in different elements of the Marvel Universe. So I think it's a great addition, and I'm looking forward to seeing kind of where they go with it.
Yeah, should be cool.
Yeah. So that wraps up now our best of 2016. We're had some conversation about this as well in our prior podcast. So if you didn't get a chance to check that out, definitely do that. We talked about a couple great films there as well. But now what we're going to do here is we're going to move into probably what a lot of people enjoy the most, which is our worst of 2016.
There weren't any bad movies in 2016, were there?
There were no bad films in 2016.
Yeah, Joel liked all the movies in 2016.
Well, I don't know about that one. So Matt, why don't you kick us off? What's our first worst of 2016 movie?
And this is one that I feel like we definitely agree on.
Yeah, probably.
It's going to be Batman v Superman.
Oh, goodness.
Wow.
Do we have to say anything? No, I'm kidding.
No, this movie, I felt like it had a lot of potential, but it just tried to do too much.
Yeah.
They tried to cram way too much in this movie. Instead of it being just a Batman versus Superman film, it ended up being a Batman versus like 3 different villains, and then it ended up being, let's intro the entire Justice League for our DC EU or whatever they're calling it.
Let's have a film where we introduce other films.
Right.
That's kind of what it felt like.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
The story was sloppy. The motivations behind a lot of the characters was really weird.
Oh my goodness.
The characterizations of certain characters, i.e. Lex Luthor Jr., I think.
Yeah. It might have been that way they were playing that. Yeah.
Right.
Jesse Eisenberg.
And the biggest thing for me was the plot device.
Yeah.
And I don't want to give it away, but the plot device,
I think you can.
The plot device used to essentially make everything all right between Batman and Superman. It made me cringe. It literally
just killed a man.
It literally made me upset at the movie. I was like, what?
Yeah.
What? That doesn't make sense. And
I think I heard 4 or 5 people in the theater, and there was only like maybe 4 or 5 of us in the theater, but I think I heard a few people in the theater actually snicker and kind of laugh at that moment, which is never a good sign. You know, when your movie's an action suspense and people are laughing at the dialogue.
They tried to do too much. There was too much going on. I think that was probably the biggest thing. I don't know how much of it was Zack Snyder, how much of it was studio meddling.
Yeah.
To try and catch up with the MCU. There probably was a little bit of that because they are so far behind, and they're trying to essentially mimic what the Marvel Cinematic Universe has going on. And it's just a messy movie.
Totally agree. I think, this was frustrating for me. I didn't have the highest expectations, but I had the opportunity actually to see this film being announced, the San Diego Comic-Con, when they announced it in Hall H, and everybody's freaking out and they're like, oh my goodness, Batman versus Superman, because there is a comic book series that this is based on that a lot of people really like, a lot of people really enjoy, and they went with some of it, but then they decided suddenly we're just going to go in this completely off direction with a lot of these intertwining additional story elements like you're talking about to move it into different things. And it fell victim to me to additionally, I think, if you look at certain films that have come out in the last couple of years where there's these versus type scenarios, right? If you look at Cowboys versus Aliens, if you look at Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies, Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter, it's like this figures that of their own universe, and then they smash them together in this film, and then they end up messing it up. And I think a lot of the problem with it is they tend to take things, and they did this as well in this film, they took it super serious.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, how ridiculous is it that you've got Batman versus this kind of Superman, godly-like character? I mean, you could have, not to say it would be funny, but you could have had some like, really? Kind of like that's going to happen type moments.
Right.
And they could have made it a lot more interesting. Whereas I felt like they were trying to tie in a bunch of stories, and they were trying to go really super epic and big, like with the action and the sense of drama and purpose and meaning. And it was like, it's Batman versus Superman. Just have some fun with it. Yeah. Keep it lighthearted. Don't have especially sorry, I'm going to spoil the ending there, but when they kill Superman at the ending, I mean, you built up this silly story of like Batman versus Superman, and then Batman ends up basically beating Superman, and then he dies like immediately afterward. Right. From some random monster. So I don't know. It felt like they were hitting all the bases incorrectly with the different characters and really not knowing what their motivations were. Like Superman's supposed to be this kind of grander than life, kind of bright shining star, and Batman's supposed to be this kind of somber, dark, deep, cave dwelling type person. And a face off between those two should have been a lot more interesting.
Yeah, for
sure. That's how I felt. Yeah.
Absolutely, I agree.
Cool. So any more thoughts on that film?
No, that's it. You hit it all.
Cool. We'll move on to our next one then, which I'm going to actually enter this one because, Matt, I don't know if you had a chance to see this film, but this was a real disappointment for me because I saw the first film. I really enjoyed it. I thought they did a lot of things right. I don't think it was a perfect film, but for what it was very, very enjoyable. The film that I'm referring to is Now You See Me Too.
Ah.
Yeah. So, goodness, this film, the first one, for what it was, for the basically kind of fun little action-y kind of adventure film, a little bit of suspense, like intrigue type thing. It was kind of a mystery film mapped into like a magic type scenarios. Yeah. It was interesting. The characters were good. I felt like it hit the beats that it needed to hit at the right times. And it set up this really cool, just self-contained, that's important, self-contained story of what this would be.
I saw the first one.
Right.
I thought the first one was all right.
Yeah. And it the magic in that was magical, but at the same time, it felt grounded. It felt like this is relatively well within the realm of believability. It's stretching. It's on the cusp of it.
Yeah, kind of like what you would be like, well, how did David Blaine do something like that? So you could be like, okay, maybe they know some David Blaine stuff,
Exactly. You've probably seen some tricks where it's been a bit like, okay, how did that happen? And then you later on understand it. And they did a right amount of job of kind of showing you behind the scenes with some of the tricks to make you realize, okay, well, there is some sort of science or, understanding to how they're doing these tricks. And so they also set up an interesting kind of twist, which happens with, a couple of the main characters close to the end, where you realize the story was a little bit deeper. It was primarily a story about, this detective and this girl, and then four other characters, and kind of like their journey of becoming these famous magicians, I should say, or illusionists, if you will. Yeah. The second movie did this horrible, horrible, horrible thing, which is what is referred to by a lot of people as a retcon. And it immediately, retcon basically is defined as kind of, you take this pre-existing information that's been shared, and then you go back and you change it around. You rewrite it. It's something that's done in comic books a lot of times. It's like, with Spider-Man, what they did in Spider-Man 3, where it wasn't this guy that was escaping that killed, Ben Parker's dad, or Peter Parker, sorry, Ben Parker's the one that died, killed Peter Parker's uncle, but it was this other random guy that actually got bumped into. So it immediately sets up this idea that like, okay, well, the first film was then basically just a trick. Right. Like you were setting all this stuff up, which obviously wasn't in the first film.
Pulls the carpet out from underneath it. Yeah,
which is funny because it's like, oh, well, it's a magic film, so maybe they did it on purpose. But you can tell that was not there to begin with in the original film. They just wanted
to go with some new plot that would do that to try and keep it interesting.
Absolutely. And they separated the different characters. They introduced it. So one of the characters that had been in the first film, they got rid of her. I'm guessing she read the script and was probably like, meh. So they bring in another girl, Lizzie Kaplan.
Who was Isla Fisher.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
That's it.
So
okay.
Lizzie Kaplan, she's a great actress. She can do a really good job, but she had this character in the film where it was like she was almost at times sexually inappropriately sexually advancing on one of the other characters.
Oh, weird.
Which made me feel really uncomfortable at times. I was like, if a guy had done this in a film to a girl, people would be like, oh my gosh, this guy's like a
boycotted.
Sexual... Yeah, you'd be like, throw this guy in jail. Right. And so that made me feel uncomfortable. The scenarios and the basic setups for a lot of the magical type elements were completely like, if you thought the first movie was a little bit far-fetched, this movie there's a scene where they're trying to steal. First of all, because you're a magician doesn't mean you're good at espionage. Right. In stealing and thievery.
You're not a ninja.
Right. It can help. But they do this scene where they're breaking in to steal like this computer chip, and they're doing these like sleight of hand tricks that, there's like 10 guards in the room, and there's like 15 scenarios where one guard out of the corner of his eye would have had to have seen or heard something, and they just happen to not magically see, they're throwing. So numerous different elements like that. The retcon pissed me off more than I can say. And then they tried to set up what I think was this expanded universe of like The Ring, which it really didn't call for. Like I said, the first film was self-contained. Yeah. You ended it and you felt like, okay, they've advanced far enough. The things have been accomplished that need to be accomplished. And then the second film, like, hey, let's make this a lot bigger than it needs to be.
Right. So kind of my own perspective on that is since I haven't seen it, it's just kind of, and I didn't see it. I think I had the chance to see this movie, and then a lot of people I know and trust that are, or either in the film industry or have seen it were like, nah. And because I wasn't too high on the first one. I mean, I thought it was okay. Yeah. But there was no way. Just with the trailer alone, there was something where I saw in the trailer that they teleported. It's almost like they teleported from something to China. I'm like,
they
okay,
go through a magical tube.
Yeah, so that's not magic to me at a point. That's just, a plot device.
Yeah. I mean, the idea in the film was that they had somehow been hypnotized, but I'm like, so you hypnotized all four of them who are actual magicians that know how to do these hypnotisms. And yeah, it just got really far-fetched,
right?
And it pissed me off, and that's why I made my worst film.
So yeah, sorry to say, Now You See Me fans.
Yeah, so that's going to conclude our worst of 2016 for this episode. We're going to continue on with our worst of 2016 in the next episode, as well as finalize our most anticipated of 2017. So definitely check that out. Matt, before we finish up here, do we have any news? Anything we want to talk about?
Yeah, a couple of news items, and we'll just go over them real quickly. But I thought they were worth noting because there's some big things that some studios have planned, especially in the next year or so, maybe 2 years, depending. But first off is, so 2017, this year essentially is going to be the launch of another cinematic universe of sorts. So now you have the Marvel Cinematic Universe, then you have the DC Extended Universe is what they're calling it.
Who next?
Right, now we have the Universal Monsters universe.
Wow.
So and they're actually, and we've seen marketing on this already, but the Mummy is going to be kicking this off. So Universal has been known for all the previous old like monster films. You have like the old Boris Karloff,
right?
And then you have the old school Frankensteins and Mummies and Bride of Frankensteins and Wolfman and all that stuff from back in the day.
Yeah.
So they're essentially bringing those back to the forefront.
At this point, it's kind of like your parents, franchise, if
you
will. Yeah.
They're modernizing them.
Yeah.
And from the looks of it, especially with this new, especially just with what we've seen with the Mummy, essentially, is they're going to be bringing a more serious tone. Because I didn't mind the first Mummy iteration with Brendan Fraser. I grew up with that, so sure, the movie's might not be critically acclaimed, but I had fun with it because I went to it's fun. Yeah, I went to the movie with my dad. Saw
Vinny, and you got the whole thing. Yeah,
we've seen it a ton of times, but yeah. So this looks like it's going a more serious route. I like the vibe. I like the tone of it.
Yeah.
I think if this is what they set up, then it could be good. And I think they have some great talent behind it. They have Javier Bardem. He's going to be coming in at some point. Johnny Depp even, which could be perfect for him since he's got this kind of character, like weird cartoony character thing going on lately.
Depends on how they use him to me. He's almost a comedic character to me now.
Right.
I've seen him in some, even recently, I don't want to spoil anything, but recent film that he was like, surprise, and I actually ended up laughing when I saw him.
And okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Oh, so okay, sorry, joke. Anyway, and then we, Russell Crowe is in it. He's kind of the Dr. Jekyll character in this series. So and you'll see that in some of the marketing.
As long as he
well.
doesn't sing,
I think we're safe.
We're safe.
I think we're safe on that.
We're not going to see a singing Frankenstein.
Anyway, so I'm kind of excited to see how this turns out. I think if they take their time on it and don't really rely on what DC's doing and trying to introduce everything all at once, I think they have a self-contained story. I think if they can keep the star power, they certainly have it.
Yeah.
I think if they use that to their advantage, I think they could certainly have something pretty special on their hands.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm a bit hesitant. I think I'm a bit fearful, mainly because I feel like we're seeing an ongoing. This is the same thing that's happening with kind of every franchise right now. Avatar is breaking into 2 and 3 films.
Right.
Aliens starting off with their prequel series, which they're going to be doing, 3 more films. And you've got all these different kind of universes that are, even Now You See Me 2 is trying to break into a universe. And it feels like the studios are trying to do this thing where in the past, everything was about a prequel or a sequel. It was like, a pre-existing something that we're going to play out again so people can re-see it. And, even with Ghostbusters, we saw that they're trying to set up this kind of universe where basically it makes me upset and fearful because when you're trying to accomplish something, not with the story, but when you're trying to accomplish something for the sequels and everything going forward, Christopher Nolan talks about how when he approaches a film, every film that he approaches, he says, I'm going to put my all into, and I'm going to give that story everything that I have that's going to make it good to put it into it. And when you approach films with this idea, this is a critical perspective here of, hey, well, we're going to make this good, but we're going to more try and set up. Then you end up with, set up future things, and you end up with what we're seeing now with like Batman versus Superman. You know what I mean? And I'm afraid that similarly that's going to start happening with some of these stories.
And I think they are more content. And it's unfortunate too when you see a studio who's more content in trying to set up something at a grander scale as opposed to just focus on what they have in front of them, making that happen. And I think with this, from some of the interviews I've heard from Alex Kurtzman, I think, who's involved in this.
Yeah. I don't know, but I'm agreeing.
I'm pretty sure that he's involved with it. One of the things he said is we need to make good stories before we focus on combining them all. We need to make sure that happens naturally and kind of on its own. So I have hope for this, and I really hope it is. I mean, I like what I've seen from The Mummy so far.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's awesome and launches us into everything's got to be a cinematic universe. Everything's got to be connected these days. So I might as well just roll with it, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm gonna hold on to my excitement and wait until I see a little bit more information. But yeah, so that's going to wrap it up for us here today on the Real Review Podcast. I just want to make sure here at the end we tell you guys how you can get connected with us if you're trying to find more information or know what's going to be going on. Definitely check out our Facebook. We've got facebook.com/Real Review Media.
Right.
Check us out there. Give us a like. Follow what we got going on. We post articles and things like that on occasion. Good stuff.
Yeah.
And then lastly, if you want to send us a note, let us know what we're doing well, what we're hopefully not doing badly. Definitely drop us a line. You can drop a line at realreviewmedia@gmail.com.
Yeah, even if you have questions, send them our way.
Send them to Matt. He'll definitely answer them.
I'll try my best to answer them.
Cool. So thanks for checking us out, and keep it real.
Keep it real.